Oh, sorry, I should have said out loud that we were going to record this meeting. If you don't want your video to accidentally appear on YouTube, then keep it off. But if you are happy to have it on, then we'd love to see your face and to see you thinking through everything that's being said. So lovely to have you all with us. Sarah, thank you for stepping in at the last moment to share the plans that are currently being developed for COP26. Sarah's here joining us from the Young Christian Climate Network, who are currently doing an amazing relay, which I don't know if you're going to say anything about it, but I've been quite impressed to see the efforts that are being done for that relay. And so, yeah, I think the heart of this seminar is to talk about COP26, which is the UN's International Climate Change Conference, which is happening in November in Glasgow, I believe.
Right, yeah.
So enough from me. Over to you, Sarah.
Great, thanks, Phil. Yeah, well, as you said, and perhaps you've seen on the programme and you're feeling a bit confused, I'm not Rachel Mander. So Rachel is somewhere between Bath and Salisbury. I think they should just be arriving into Salisbury, yeah, probably around now. They actually set off on today's walk at 6 a.m. to try and get ahead of the heat, because as you can imagine, it's been, yeah, a tough few days for them. But I'll go into a bit more on kind of what the relay is and how it's come about later on. But yeah, thank you so much for having me and for being with us. Obviously it's just a few of us, so we keep things very relaxed. But yeah, we're going to be thinking a bit about COP26 and the kind of context that we're in this year. So yeah, it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, really. Obviously, we've only got a short time together, so hopefully we'll have a bit of time for questions at the end, but this is kind of where I'm going to be going in the next 20 minutes or so. So first thing to say is kind of, yeah, the context really of the Young Christian Climate Network, where we found ourselves in our first year. It's not a normal context at all. So this very steep line you see on the right side of the graph here is showing the increase in carbon dioxide concentration in our atmosphere over the last 50 years. And it is this line which has led to these international climate change conferences happening. They're called COPs, Conference of Parties, and they're part of the UNFCCC, which is a bit of a mouthful. It's a United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Basically, the number after COP will tell you which one it is. So COP21 happened in Paris 6 years ago, and I guess you could say a COP is a little bit like the Olympic Games of climate change, and this COP21 was particularly iconic. It led to the Paris Agreement, which was signed by 195 nations, and they agreed to limit global warming to 2 degrees and pursue limiting it to 1.5 degrees. So the second thing to say is that half a degree really does matter. Perhaps thinking, what difference does 1.5 degrees to 2 degrees really make? But actually it's really significant. It could reduce the number of people exposed to climate-related risks, things like really extreme weather conditions, as well as their susceptibility to poverty because of the effects on livelihoods, by up to several 100 million. So it is really important that we do try and pursue that 1.5 degree limitation. But as you probably can guess, we're not quite on track to achieving that. And what this graph is showing that emissions today are 60% above the level in 1992, which is the year that the world first agreed at the Rio Earth Summit that we needed to take action to prevent dangerous climate change. And yeah, emissions have just increased more and more over the years since then. And so we need to be even more ambitious. The levels of ambition that were agreed to in the Paris Agreement must be roughly tripled if we're going to get anywhere close to the 2 degree pathway of trying to limit global warming to that extent. And if we're really going for this 1.5 degree limitation, then it needs to be at least fivefold. So it's a huge ask, a huge amount of action that needs to be agreed to at COP26 this year, if we're going to be back on track to that agreement. And so, yeah, kind of where does YCCN, the Young Christian Climate Network, fit in to all of that in this context of, huge amounts of action needing to be taken that we're just not on track to? That's kind of why it was formed, and we're an action-focused community of 18 to 30-year-olds who really are looking to move beyond the kind of individual lifestyle changes that many of us have taken in response to the climate crisis, moving towards a collective action that perhaps will have a more significant impact. So we were launched in August of last year, kind of mid-pandemic, which is why we've all got very familiar with Zoom calls. We had these three aims. So first is to connect. Many of us felt like we wanted to be part of a network of like-minded individuals of a similar age with similar values, wanting to take action together and having this real heart for community at the centre of what we were doing. Very few of us have ever met in real life, although as the relay started over the last few weeks, we've seen people starting to meet up, which is kind of strange, really. But yeah, these Zoom calls that we've had every week are always full of lots of laughter. We have kind of got to know each other pretty well through those. The second is ACT. So we started off with these three action streams, which helps us kind of focus what it is that we were doing. So first was churches. So people who were perhaps in their church community wanting to encourage the rest of their congregation to be taking action, but perhaps weren't quite sure how to get started with that. So really encouraging one another in that way. The second was workplaces, a similar kind of thing. Those of us in places of work were perhaps wanting to encourage them to be having things like environmental policies. And then the third was central campaigns. And we really recognise that quite a lot of people in that kind of 18 to 30 bracket are probably moving around a lot, perhaps our students, so maybe aren't particularly plugged into a church community, or maybe don't have a workplace. And so that group was working on lobbying, working with other organisations, helping them to develop their own environmental policies, all kinds of things. And then the last was grow. So wanting to grow in number as a network, but also as individuals in our own contexts, and the kind of understanding that we have and those that we have influence over had as well. And so that's kind of the starting point. And it's been really amazing to see how the network has grown over the last coming up to a year. We've got around 80 people who are signed up, which is amazing, and more coming in all the time from all over the UK. And so this relay to COP26, which I've mentioned a couple of times, came about because we recognised in January that we had this kind of real unique moment of opportunity and decision this year, with the G7 summit happening last month down in Carbis Bay, and COP26 up in Glasgow in November. Both of these things happening on UK soil felt so significant to us. And so we felt this kind of phrasing of rising to the moment was really important. I think it's probably fair to say that the idea has slightly snowballed since it first came about, and we didn't really envision it being this big, but it's been just mind-blowing. We're so in awe of how things have come together and really grown as more people have got on board. And so this is like a relay style pilgrimage. So it's about 1,200 miles that are being walked. Clearly no one is walking the whole way, because that would be insane. So people are taking little chunks. It's around 10 miles each day, all the way to, started about 6 weeks ago, and we'll be reaching Glasgow at the end of October. This was to kind of create this rallying point for the church across the UK, around which it will raise its voice in support of ambitious change for COP26, but also beyond that. And we wanted this relay to have an impact and a reach beyond those in the church who are already engaged in climate justice, wanting to give more people something really tangible to get involved with, something that they can kind of physically do that will engage them and connect them with climate justice beyond the end of the relay. we're very much inspired by the pilgrimage to Paris, which happened for COP21. And one of our co-leads, Josh, actually walked on that pilgrimage. And also the Jubilee Debt campaign in 2000, which most of us were kind of toddlers or very young for that. So we've heard those stories and been inspired by those as well. So yeah, this is just a bit of the story so far. Yeah, today marks the last chunk of the first third of the relay. So we're just coming to the end of the southwest section. And it's been, yeah, great to see so many people walking. We've got 10 residency hubs where the relay kind of stops for a few days in a city, and there's a few events happening. So we've had Exeter and Bristol so far. And yeah, the hospitality that walkers have been shown and the ways that, yeah, communities have really come together has been really fantastic to see. And our kind of main message of the relay really is that no country should be pushed further into debt because of climate change. So we know that extreme weather events are becoming more and more commonplace, and climate vulnerable countries are pushed further and further into debt as they attempt to kind of mitigate those disastrous effects of climate change, particularly on protecting homes. So every kind of weather disaster, every attempt to rebuild, trying to adapt means higher levels of debt, higher interest rates, higher risk. And so the climate crisis is also a debt crisis for many countries. And it's been great to see that that message has really been picked up by some MPs that have been involved in various places along the relay so far, as well as some of the media coverage that we've seen as well. And so we're calling on the government to do these 4 things. The first is to reinstate the foreign aid budget to pre-COVID levels. Second is to secure this agreement that was made by really rich countries to double the commitment of $100 billion a year for climate finance. To develop with other governments and international organisations a new regulated climate loss and damage mechanism, which not only saves lives, but also livelihoods. And finally, to push for the debts of the world's poorest countries to be cancelled so that they can better confront the climate crisis and other urgent priorities as well. And so, yeah, so we're kind of calling on people to get involved in the relay. We wanted to have this really kind of easy to share message that everyone could kind of understand and get on board with and remember when they're sharing with others. And so it's that climate change does cost the earth. And in the process of that, it's pushing countries into debt. And so we do this walk, this relay, as an act of faith, hope, and love, and trying to show everyone that it is time to rise to the moment. And this is our way of doing that as we call on world leaders to do the same at COP26. Ooh, just stop that. That's my sister-in-law replying to, so she's 7 months pregnant, and I sent her a photo of someone with a face mask, but for a bump, a baby bump. Ridiculous, she said. Anyway, so we have had this lovely boat made. It's called the Pilgrim. You might recognise that the base of it is actually a wicker coffin, which was someone's very inventive idea. And this came about because in the wake of the pandemic, we've heard the phrase that we're all in the same storm, but in different boats. And as young people under the age of 30, we kind of see that we're on this course of another storm as well, a climate crisis. Over half of all emissions have been made in our lifetimes, and the global average temperatures are set to rise by several degrees over the decades ahead of us. And we know that the consequences of this storm, if you like, will not be felt equally, but will definitely be felt acutely. And so this boat is a representation of our hope that we will rise to the moment and use this year to set sail towards a more just future. It's very much not a full-size boat, but it is travelling the country along with the relay. I think it's being kind of cycled by people at various points and is taking up residency at each of those hubs. And we felt that this was a particularly pertinent symbol for the relay because around 10% of the world's population live on land that is less than 5 meters above the high tide line. And these coastal communities are particularly vulnerable to extreme weather events. Sea level rise and coastal erosion threatens the existence of those countries and could probably trigger a mass refugee crisis this century. We also see things like ocean acidification, coral bleaching, destroying biodiversity and really impacting livelihoods in many small island states. And so we wanted to use this symbol, so the boat and the pilgrim, as well as these origami boats we're asking people to make as another way of raising awareness as part of the relay. And so how can you get involved? Well, there's loads of different ways, and I would really recommend visiting our website. There's loads of information on there with many links to different docs and spreadsheets that will hopefully help you find your way, but I'll do my best to explain a little bit as well. So lots of different ways to get involved, and perhaps you're close to the route in some way. You can see that in more detail on the website. But if you're keen to be part of the route, perhaps you want to walk with us, which would be amazing. Or maybe on a day you could be like an on-call support. So if there was an emergency of some kind, perhaps coming to pick someone up, something like that. It might be that you want to meet and greet some walkers. I know today they were having lunch in a vicarage garden, for example. Or we need overnight hosts for our lead walkers as well. Maybe you could offer that. Or maybe you could help to transport the boat. And then these residency hubs where we're having these bigger events. So we've got a few examples of Birmingham, Nottingham, Sheffield, Manchester is one of the hubs. We've also got Durham. Maybe you could get involved in some of those events, or if there's nothing happening in your area, you could think about setting one up. And perhaps, yeah, as a church, you could do something like asking people to do kind of prayer picnics, things like that. Using the relay as an opportunity to raise awareness in your own community. I know in particular, if anyone happens to be in the Leeds area or the Newcastle area, and we're particularly looking for people to help with coordinating walking there. So if that is you, then do get in touch. But that's kind of all from me. I'm happy to take any questions, but yeah, there's an email address there, and we'll also head to the website, and there's lots of information on how you can get involved with the relay there. Perhaps I'll stop sharing screen.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you, Sarah, so much for taking the time to share this with us. Yeah, I think this is just an amazing initiative, and I was really gutted that I wasn't here in Bristol last week when you guys came through. So I might try and pop over to somewhere else when they're going through, or maybe even join part of the walking team. So we've got a question here from Will, which is, what is YCCN's plan post COP26? Do you have anything brewing beyond that, or are you just focusing on this as your big thing? Maybe I'll tie my question in as well, which is, once you get there, is there something planned?
Great questions on both counts. I think I'll start with, so once we get there, we're really hopeful that we'll be able to kind of be part of some of the talks that are happening there. We're quite closely linked to Christian Aid, who I think have some stuff planned, so we're probably hoping to kind of tie in with them. And we have got a few members who are kind of Glasgow based, who are doing all that they can to perhaps try and get us some space to be taking some action there. And kind of beyond the end of the relay is a really good question. We really quickly realised that this would just have to be the complete focus for this year. As I said, kind of snowballed quite quickly. And so I think those kind of 3 action streams I mentioned, so the churches, workplaces, central campaigns, we hope to kind of pick those back up a bit again, probably be focusing more on our individual contexts. And we also have an in-person meeting planned for December, which is really exciting, and will be a kind of a celebration of the end of the relay, as well as getting to meet each other in real life.
Excellent. Where's that planned for?
So that's going to be in London, I believe. But yeah, TBC.
Brilliant, brilliant. Does anyone else have any questions that they would like to ask or comments? Maybe some of you have been involved as well and you'd like to share your experience. All is quiet. All is quiet. Give it another moment in case someone's frantically typing away. Aha, Jane Lewis says, are you hoping for crowds to come out on the pavements? Jane, I assume that you mean by that in each of the places where people go. Is that right? Yeah. Just kind of lining the streets and yeah. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, that would be lovely. I'm sure it would be really, yeah, I can imagine today when they're walking in this heat, that would really help to be cheering them on. But yeah, kind of any ways that places where we're walking through can kind of help. Things like cups of tea are definitely appreciated. But yeah, I think we've all got a bit of a vision of getting into Glasgow to lots of clapping and cheering, but we'll see. Might not be that realistic.
Well, yeah, hopefully as people become more aware of it happening, there will be more people like you, Jane, that want to go out and cheer them on. I saw in the pictures there that there were people outside Bristol Cathedral with a big banner saying, you know, Bristol welcomes the young climate young Christian climate network. So I think, yeah, probably as it continues, it will pick up momentum and gain that sort of thing. We've got a few more questions coming in now or comments. So 1 second. So Will says, I did the walk from Nailsea to Bristol and loved it. When do you all meet online?
Great. Oh, glad you enjoyed the walk. We meet on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. And we try to limit that to an hour. So it's just kind of check-in of what's happening. So that's when we meet.
And Margaret is asking, she's saying that our church is in Cambridge and we plan a green service on Sunday, the 25th of September. We'd love to be able to report on the relay to COP26. We are already pushing to become an eco-church. Is there anything happening in the Cambridge area? You know of anything sort of young Christian climate network related there?
So as far as I know, the route is fairly kind of west rather than east, certainly kind of in the Cambridge area. But it could be that there might be I can never say this word, tributary, I think, route, which we're encouraging people to set up. So if the route happened to not kind of go into your area, you could kind of do a short walk that could kind of contribute towards the miles walked overall. And so, yeah, I can double check on whether there is anything planned in the Cambridge area. But otherwise, yeah, it's perhaps something you could think about doing or having, this kind of green service on the 25th of September. Yeah, kind of mentioning the relay and some of the messaging behind it would be a great idea, I think.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Sarah, for taking the time. We just got one more question, and that's from Arnold Mays. Do you have any links with Just Love, the student Christian organisation? So I think that's a particular organisation down here in Bristol. I'm not sure how wide that is nationally.
Yeah, so there's a few different groups, and we do have connections with them, and we have done some work with them. We've got quite a few members that are also part of Just Love. They're great.
Very good. Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to us, and we will be cheering on all the people that are part of the relay and looking for what we can do to take part in that and raising awareness for COP26. Thank you for a clear presentation.
No, thank you. Thanks for joining, everyone. It's been great.